Marvellous. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Audit and Governance Committee. My name's Councillor Lomas. I'm the chair of the committee. As usual, our meeting this evening will be live streamed and available to watch later. And here in the room, we have officers of the council on either side of me to assist me in chairing the meeting, and more officers at the end of the table who will be presenting to us at various points in the meeting. We also have members of the committee on either side in the middle. At this point, I'd like to extend an especially warm welcome to new committee members, Councillors Musson, Baker and Cuthbertson. We're delighted to have you with us. I would also like to record thanks to Councillor Pavlovic for his excellent chairing of this committee over the last 3 years and guiding us through understanding our roles in audit and governance over the last 3 years. Audit and governance is a crucial committee, and our function is to ensure good governance across the City of York Council. And we do expect, encourage and invite questions from members to ensure everyone understands what's being presented and to reveal opportunities to improve governance, and through that to improve the operation of the council for the benefit of all. Being new to the role of chair, I hope you will excuse any errors I make. And I am ever grateful for the support and assistance of everyone who makes these meetings happen. I'm especially grateful this evening for Janie's guidance in taking me through it. And you may see me turn to Janie for help occasionally and turn to Councillor Fisher, the vice chair, for help as well. I hope you will understand and appreciate that that's because we all want this meeting to run smoothly for everyone. So we've had apologies this evening from Councillor Webb, who is substituted by Councillor Looker. Thank you, Councillor Looker. And we've also had apologies from Councillor Baker. So at this point in the evening, I will ask, are there any declarations of interest that are not already on the register of interests? No. In that case, we move to the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of April. Can I ask, are there any issues anyone wants to raise on those minutes? Everybody content that I sign them? Marvellous. And we move now to public participation. This is the part in the meeting where members of the public can address the committee. Any members of the public who register to speak will have 3 minutes to address the committee. We've got one member of the public wishing to speak this evening, Mr. Andy Mendes. So if I can invite you to come forward, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello again. I better put my glasses on. This may well be my valedictory 3 minutes. Some of you will know that I've been banging on, pending. What I understand has now happened, that you've appointed 2 brand new independent members, one of whom I think I've just briefly seen. They must be excellent, because I understand that at least one of the unsuccessful candidates was pretty good and experienced, if getting on a bit. But anyway, I hope that your new independents give you both a lot of support and a deal of challenge. It seems to me that's the important role for them, to keep you on your toes. So in a busy agenda, it seems best for me to make my last remarks on a subject which you know has been my favourite topic over the years, internal audit. Don't you, Max? There do seem to me to have been many fewer reports since COVID, and Max, I think, in his report suggests there's still an overhang of work coming through. I do hope that as a committee, you are still getting them as they are published, rather than in a lump in the papers, so that you have a chance to review and challenge them in real time. I think that's quite a useful and important facility for members. Of today's reports, I'd like to pick up on a report on CDM, Highways Construction Design and Management, which was in the pack and was reported recently. And the report states that the purpose of this audit was to provide assurance to management that procedures and controls within the system will ensure 4 things: One, that induction programs have been completed for everyone working on site. No evidence found was the answer. Two, supervisory safety checks have been carried out frequently and are documented, and the answer seemed to be no evidence found. The third, desk studies had been carried out with due diligence, and these are communicated to the relevant individuals. That was not mentioned in the report in words that I could understand or that I could find. And finally, that there's a clear and robust audit trail of all documents produced and strict version control procedures in place, and that the audit found no consistent file structure in use. So, of course, the audit ended up with a reasonable assurance. Now, I know it's a broken record. You've heard it from me and others several times, I think. But how can your committee have confidence that the assurance rating is applied in a way that meets the test of common sense and that allows you and GRAG, who are the other people I think who receive them, to ensure good process? In this case, in a health and safety context, how happy are you with our controls here? Now, that's the end of my contribution. I will, having thought about it for a few months, I think I will write to Katie and to Johnny Crawshaw about the use of internal audit reports and internal audit report work in the context of scrutiny and the context of audit and governance, more in hope than expectation that there'll be a more useful follow-up from some important and good audit findings. But anyway, that's me. Adieu. Have fun. I shall listen to you for a while at least. If I fall asleep, just ignore me.
Thank you very much. And I'm certain that your comments will have been noted, and many of them will be addressed, I'm sure, as we go through our agenda this evening. So we move next to our corporate governance report, which you'll find in your agenda pack starting at page 7, and I'll pass over to Lorraine.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you. Hello, committee members. This is to give you the updates in the report of the corporate governance performance indicators. So mostly the in-time performance and responses. It includes the additional indicators that we've added recently, which is the 4 C's. So your complaints, comments, concerns and compliments, as well as adults and children's social care complaints. So it's the continuation of those additional indicators for your information. We're also moving on to the ICO, so the Information Commissioner's Office, one published decision notice since the last report. There's the annex and the details of the Ombudsman, so the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman and Housing Ombudsman decisions since the last report to committee, and an update on the annual assessment through the NHS Digital Data Security and Protection Toolkit. So to draw your attention to some of the highlights in the performance indicators, I'll draw your attention to the improvements made in the number of corporate complaints responded to in time. That's one of the achievements and hoped for outcomes and aims of improving the corporate complaints policy and procedures. There's also an improvement in adult social care complaints compared to last year. We're also maintaining over 80% combined in-time performance for responses to FOI and EIR requests. And just on that, we have recently met with the ICO's FOI group manager as part of his new appointment, and we're building that relationship back up with that group manager because there hasn't been one for a while, and also through COVID, and working with him on how we can make further improvements on work in-time and case management on FOIs and EIRs. Moving on to the ICO's published decision notice, there was one published decision notice for the council in the time period since the last report to committee, and that was partly upheld in favour of the complainant and partly not upheld in that we did apply certain exemptions appropriately for the response. Happy to take more detailed questions at that point in the report. Also, there's the Annex 3, there's the list of Ombudsman cases and decisions, actions and recommendations. I'll draw your attention to those 11 cases. 7 were closed after their initial inquiries as either out of jurisdiction or no further action needed by the council, because from their initial correspondence with us, we'd either put the recommendations that they would have made in place before it reached them. One was not upheld, And there were 3 cases that were upheld and recommendations and actions were put in place and remedies for the complainant. And just on NHS Digital Data Security Protection Toolkit, just to add on to what's already in the report at paragraph 6.1 to 6.4, we have now successfully submitted and published our annual assessment, and we have maintained the level 2 assurance that is required for the NHS digital access to systems and data security standards. So that was just at the time of writing report. I hadn't quite finished the publication and submission with NHS Digital, but it's just to let you know that is now published and online if you want to look at it. Any questions? Shall we move to questions? Or
Any questions, members? Councillor Cuthbertson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Lorraine. Just a few comments on the corporate governance indicators on page 13. I say comments, I mean questions, of course. I noticed that the 2021-2022 indicators, in some cases, have gone up in terms of time to, or number of requests received, and then number of requests not responded to in time. I'm thinking of EIR, I think it is, where there's, sorry, I'll try to get my facts in order before I speak next time. There was, on the FOI requests responded to in time, is 803 this year, and 2 years ago it was 1166, 82%. Plays 78.7%. So my question is this downward trend on things being responded to in time, is that you expect that to continue, or is that a COVID symptom?
I think it is partly due to COVID and some service areas having to redirect the resources and capacity and concentration priorities onto other work. We did maintain, I think, quite a good percentage of in time during the 2 years of the different restrictions, etc., in response to COVID. And we are starting to see that upward lift in numbers answered in time. So if you look at the quarter reports for 2021-22, whilst we started off at around 75%, we have started to see an increase. I know it's only up to 78%, just under 79%, but it does show that that projection is that we are continuing to work with service areas to maintain and improve that in-time performance. So I do expect it to improve going forward. We've also, as part of the discussions with the ICO group manager, agreed with him some actions that we will take, and we're having a further follow-up discussion with him in September and going forward later this year.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lorraine.
Any other questions from members? Lorraine? I have one. On the page 17, the ICO decision notice, has that now been dealt with? Are you able, because I know it was published last month, wasn't it?
So we had a delay in getting access to the published decision notice. There's been a bit of a mix-up with the contact email address for us. I have contacted the ICO again, and they've reassured me that they've corrected all the contact details for us, and we've agreed with the caseworker that we will comply with the timescale for this decision notice to be dealt with. So yes, it will be complied with in time.
Brilliant, thank you. Anybody else? Got a question? I've got another one. That's okay. On page 20, there was an upheld complaint around parking, and obviously we can see that some remedy has been done for this individual case, but it did strike me that perhaps this is something that we need to be reassured that something is happening on a broader level on, and I don't know if you are aware of that or if we need to refer that to scrutiny, because it does appear that there is evidence here of a wider problem than just one individual case?
So there was part of the actions and remedies by the Ombudsman around contacting anyone who had complaints. So that work is ongoing with the service area, and we're not yet at the 3-month timescale that the Ombudsman had put in place for that. The team do consistently keep in touch with the service on those actions being taken forward. Regarding the question of referring to scrutiny, I would have to look at my manager and ask if that's an appropriate and can we do that and should we do that? And if there's any more details about the specific case, that's the reason for Kath being here, because she's much more closer to the details. So I'll pass to Jane. Sorry, Jenny.
Thank you, Lorraine. Yes, it's a very legitimate suggestion from this committee to refer your concerns to corporate scrutiny. I would suggest to Councillor Crawshaw, and he can work with you identifying the correct scrutiny committee that may add this to their work plan. I think Councillor Crawshaw has already indicated some concerns on behalf of that corporate scrutiny committee in respect of parking across issues across the city. So yes, that's entirely appropriate, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions for Lorraine and Kath? No? Well, thank you very much. We shall move on to the annual report of the Head of Internal Audit, which you'll find in your pack starting at page 23, and I will hand over to Max at this point.
Thank you, Chair. So this is one of our key reports to the committee. It details internal audit and counter fraud work that we've completed in the last year, and importantly, it provides you with our overall opinion on the framework of governance, risk management and control within the council. So the report itself has got 2 annexes. The first annex, Annex 1, covers internal audit work, and the second annex covers counter fraud work. So I'll take those in each turn, starting with internal audit. Within Annex 1, we list the final reports that we've issued, as well as those audits which are currently in progress, but that have reached a sufficient stage that we can actually use the information from those to help inform our opinion. And we also detail other audit work which is relevant to providing the opinion. The opinion itself is on page 32, and we are providing a reasonable assurance opinion. In providing that opinion, we haven't placed any reliance on other assurance providers or other sources of assurance. I'm also required to inform the council of any significant control weaknesses which I consider necessary or should be considered for inclusion in the annual governance statement. For this year, there are no issues which I'm flagging up for that. You also need to be confident in the work that internal audit does, and therefore you can place reliance on the opinion that I'm providing. So to help provide that assurance, we provided details of our quality assurance and improvement programme. That sets out a number of elements. It includes the feedback that we have received from our audit clients, the details of our completion of the Sit for Self assessment checklist, and some other plans that we have in place to sort of improve or change the way we deliver internal audits. So hopefully that provides you with that reassurance. Just a few other things to note. We have included details of the key findings relating to 3 audits that we finalised since the last meeting of the committee, the results of some follow-up testing that we've completed, and confirmation that there have been no exit payments in the period that we have been asked to review. So that's the internal audit part of the report. The second part is covers counter-fraud work. It's pretty hopefully self-explanatory. It's all set out in Annex 2. I just draw the committee's attention to the fact that we are set a fraud savings target of £200,000, and for this year we have exceeded that target. So very happy to take questions from the committee.
Thank you, Max. Any questions from members? Councillor Fisher?
Thanks, Chair. I did look at the highway CDM report myself, and I was somewhat concerned about some of the conclusions in it, because it seemed to appear that key areas were not being addressed. Could you just possibly justify why you gave it reasonable assurance? Obviously, were there mitigating factors elsewhere that made it possible to give it that, or was it a bit generous?
I think, I mean, when we complete an audit, we look at all the information and we take a balanced view. So with this audit, there were areas of good practice and areas that were working perfectly well. Clearly, we did identify some issues, and I think, you know, it's one of those audits. It's probably a bit borderline between reasonable assurance and limited, looking at the sort of issues that we are reporting. So it's a good challenge. I think on balance it does accord with the sort of definition for reasonable assurance, but I note the comments that have been made.
As a supplementary, are there procedures in place for a follow-up audit at some point to check whether those improvements have actually been complied with?
Absolutely, that's the sort of issues that we've identified will be followed up.
Thank you. Councillor Musson, was that a supplementary? No. I'll go to Councillor Looker first and then I'll come to you.
This is probably just exposing my ignorance, because I don't often come to audit and governance. So I'm just really asking for clarification on the audit report on absence management, which has been, as far as I recall, an issue of huge significance to this council for more years than I care to think. But no opinion was given. Now, I know it's come to committee, and committee presumably have challenged all, but I'm just not quite clear, A, what that means, and B, what happens next, because I don't think the issue has gone away. As far as I remember from recent analysis of the absence from council's data, I really think it's still a challenge for this council. So I'm just asking for a bit of clarification on what this means. Has it just been abandoned, or is it still being looked at by somebody?
We provide, well, we don't give an opinion where the scope of the audit is limited in some way. So there are a couple of audits on that list where it says no opinion. That really, what that means is we've only looked at some specific issues rather than look at the whole process or system, and therefore we can't provide an opinion on that system or process. The absence management audit, from memory, was we were following up some of the issues that we'd identified in the previous audit to make sure that those have been addressed. And I think we could see that there had been improvements at the specific areas we'd looked at, but clearly because we hadn't looked at the whole process, we weren't able to provide that sort of overall opinion. It's the same with the Danesgate, that will have looked at some specific issues.
So this may be an issue that we need to review at some point, because as I say, I don't think from my understanding that the issue has vanished completely, and we may need to look at where we're taking this or how we're going to follow it up. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor.
Just to follow up on that, I think I'm fairly sure it's in the work programme for this year, but I will check. Yeah.
Thanks, Max. Councillor Musson?
Thanks, Chair. I have a similar question to Councillor Fisher's, but mine, instead of being about highways, is about the line SEN Ofsted inspection and written statement of action, where it's been given an opinion of substantial assurance. And I wonder what your, I guess, take on that is following the recent inspection that's taken place, and whether you still maybe hold that view that you've got substantial assurance of that improvement.
So that audit was looking at how well the department was implementing their own action plan. So, and it was not looking beyond that. So we weren't taking a view about the wider children's services or that particular process. So it was simply we could see that for the particular actions, those were being addressed in the sort of timescales we'd expect, hence the substantial assurance.
I guess just a follow up to that. So, and again, might be showing my own, lack of knowledge, but it's useful, I think, for us all to understand. So when you're doing assurance work, you would look at how well the council is completing its own aims, but not necessarily whether those aims sort of go far enough to meet what we want to get to. So yeah, I guess it's a bit concerning from the layman's terms to see in light of the recent report.
I mean, it's a good point. I think what you have to look at is the detailed report to see what the scope of the audit was, and therefore what we were giving an opinion on. I mean, the 3 audits which are finalised this time, which are on the council website, you'll be able to see the sort of areas that we looked at, and therefore what we found which was good or not.
Thank you. Councillor Wan.
Thank you, Chair. So starting on page 41, there's some information about the customer satisfaction surveys that you run. It seems to suggest that you wait maybe until the end of the year before you send these out, and they do seem to have quite a low take-up rate. So it's about 12% over each of the last couple of years. Do you think there's any benefit in sending these out sooner after an audit has been conducted? Might that lead to a higher response rate? It also seems to suggest that they're only issued to senior managers. And I wonder if there could be a separate piece of work where the people who are actually involved in digging out all of the stuff that you do, whether they are surveyed.
Okay, just to explain. After each audit, we send out a survey. So that survey goes to the people who are directly affected, well, on the receiving end of the audit. Those, I think it's fair to say, the response rate for those is fairly low as well. And often we'll only get a response when we've issued a critical audit report.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbertson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do have some knowledge of what was the situation with the SEN Ofsted inspection last year, in view of the position I held on the executive at the time. If you wish me to, I'll be happy to make a comment. Otherwise, I'll stay silent.
I think that would be incredibly helpful, Councillor Cuthbertson, because as Councillor Emerson said, it helps us if we can get that context and understanding.
I can tell you that following the SEN Ofsted inspection, the requirement was for the authority to provide a written statement of action. There was a fairly tight timescale on that. And if my memory serves me correctly, that written statement of action was due in probably, I think, about March or April of last year. And it was supervised quite closely by both DFE and Ofsted, as well as the council's external partners in that process, to make sure that it was actually doable and that it met the criticisms and comments in the Ofsted inspection report. And I'm happy to say that from the external side of things, Ofsted, DFE and the external partners were content that it did actually address the issues concerned. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Councillor Cuthbertson. I think that is helpful to have that understanding. Councillor Musson, is there anything you wanted to follow up on? Does that help?
It certainly does. I think it's clarified that that's, a tiny thing that had that assurance and not, it just explains the disconnect. Thank you.
Any other questions on audit and counter fraud? Anyone? Oh, Councillor Fisher, you look like you're all dealt with. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Max. Now we move on to Treasury Management Outturn, which you'll find starting on page 61 of your pack. Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. So this is your usual Treasury Management Outturn report for the last financial year, so the year ending 31st of March 2022, and it outlines activity during the year. It is a statutory report that's required by the Prudential Code, and due to unfortunate timing of meetings, it has already been considered by Executive. But you've got a brief covering report, therefore, and the main report that went to Executive on the 16th of June. And it's just here for your review, your scrutiny. There's nothing in particular that I need to draw your attention to, but as you outlined earlier, I do appreciate there are some new members of the committee. So we will look to provide some training when we bring the next report in for the mid-year review, which I think will be in November. So we concentrated on the accounts training, I think, for this time. So I recognise it's quite a technical, complex subject, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Debbie. Questions from members? No? Very impressive. We may have more questions when we return to this mid-year, once we've had our training and some of the mysteries of Treasury management become clearer. Thank you, Debbie. And we're now going to move on to statement of accounts for 2021-22, and I believe we're coming back to you, Debbie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, Emma's unwell this evening, which is why she's not here. I know you had the training yesterday, so I'll just repeat some of what Emma probably told you yesterday, but these are the draft accounts. They were published on the 21st of June. They're currently open for public inspection, and they will be for a total of 30 working days, so that's sort of roughly 6 weeks. There are no significant changes again in the code or the structure of the accounts. You are being asked to note the accounts. You're not being asked to approve anything at this stage. You are, I think, already aware that your role is to review and challenge rather than check any details. That's what the external auditor will do, and we'll report back in November, hopefully, with the final accounts, which will have been considered by the auditor, and that's when we'll bring any changes that we've had to make to the draft, any comments from the auditor, and that's also when we'll include the annual governance statement. So that sort of the more interesting version of this is going to come to you later on in the year. This is just the draft accounts for you to know and challenge, question as you see fit, really.
Thanks, Debbie. Any questions from members on the draft accounts? Councillor Wan.
Yeah, thank you. On page 101, we get some information about pensions, and the pension liability seems to have decreased quite considerably. I wonder if you knew anything about that.
Yes, so part of the, again, I don't think any of us are experts on actuarial valuations and the intricacies of pension fund valuations, but the movement, it's explained a bit more in note 49, which I'm not sure what page that is, sorry, I'll just get to the page, which is, a lot of pages, aren't there? Which starts on page 195. There's quite a lot of detail from there on, but it's essentially the actuarial gain is due to changes in the assumptions that have been made, changes in the financial assumptions from the actuary, and the sort of overall it's due to a reduction in the net present value of the scheme liabilities. So rather than anything increasing in value, the liabilities have sort of reduced, if that makes sense. Yeah, I can try and get a better explanation, but yeah.
It might be helpful, Debbie. I think we've often had questions around pensions, so that might be helpful to get some more detail on, and perhaps even, you know, kind of a bit more in-depth briefing around pension and pension
Yeah, we can
liabilities.
look at, again, one of the sort of little training sessions we could maybe do for the committee. We talked about Treasury. We could probably also do a bit of a briefing on pensions, and because the numbers fluctuate wildly year on year, and so we could just do something to reassure you how that's not necessarily anything to be concerned about, because the asset and the liability will always match.
Great. Any other questions?
Would you like me to advise on the annual governance statement position?
Thank you.
Chair, just for the benefit of our newer members as well, the annual governance statement is, as Debbie has said, is an absolutely key document which will feature in the draft statement of accounts later on in the year. Discussions with the chair, it's hoped that we can have a briefing session on why we have to have an annual governance statement, the process that we undertake, and also a little bit of information of explaining the Sit for Solace governance framework, which can be a little bit outfacing when you first see a circle in the middle of a governance report. But hopefully we can arrange a briefing session so that members understand the value and the purpose of the annual governance statement. There's also some updated SIP for guidance as well, which means our annual governance statement this year has to have a continued focus on the steps that we've continued to implement in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, whether we've made any changes to our decision-making framework, whether we've had to put different emergency decision arrangements in place, and how those continue to be monitored if we have to use them. So the SIPFA has now made it a requirement that we put more emphasis on post-COVID pandemic work and how that's affected our overall governance framework. We will bring a draft to the committee as well, so that it's not the first time that you see it when we publish the agenda. And again, that will be part of the briefing session so that you understand what all of the different jargon and phraseology means in that. As this existing members of the committee are aware, during the last municipal year, we looked at the action plan as well from the public interest report. And again, that will progress against that will feature heavily in the annual governance statement as well. And that will also probably inform external audit on their VFM opinion, which external audit are present this evening, which I'm sure members may want to ask questions about, if that helps, Chair.
Thanks, Janie. Councillor Looker.
I think it is important when we're talking about a briefing. I'm not going to ask questions on the annual report. I'm still challenged by annual reports. I think it is very essential that we do, in a sense, receive as councillors some fairly good briefing on the really quite extraordinary challenges that are looming in the face of local government finance. Because I think all of us need to be aware and understand. You read some really horrific headlines coming out of the Local Government Association, and I think York councillors need to understand and be prepared for implications that this may have as to how we are planning and reviewing our financial security going forward into the new year. I don't think these challenges are going to go away any day soon. I'm not sitting here and crossing my fingers and waiting for the cavalry to come charging over the horizon to rescue us, because I've given up the cavalry long ago. So I really do think it is important, if we are looking at briefing and looking at understanding, that this committee should understand and be aware of some of these really quite scary implications that are sitting there looming at us.
Thanks, Councillor Looker.
Yeah, we can absolutely look to do that. You're absolutely right. There are, for officers especially, there are a lot of challenges looming in terms of the financial pressures facing the council, and so it's clearly something that we're alive to. And so yeah, I'll go in and talk to colleagues about how best to bring that back to all members.
Thanks, Debbie. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I was going to bring this up, but since it didn't actually relate to the 2021-22 reports, but was more in the narrative report, I thought I'd leave it, but I think it is important. I mean, we set our budget at the start of the year. We don't expect a power-crazed lunatic to start a major European war, which has a colossal effect on inflation, fuel prices, and has led to, pay pressures as well. How do we cope with that? How can we cope with that? Is there any chance of the government coming up with money that will support us through this crisis? Because clearly we could be facing a very significant overspend this year, and I don't know how you deal with it. I'm certainly glad I don't have to do it.
Yeah, welcome to my world. I have this conversation in my head every single day. You're absolutely right. You set a budget based on a set of assumptions that you are aware of at that point in time, and usually a fortnight later they've all changed. There are some very significant challenges facing local government, the public sector as a whole. What we need to focus on, or in my opinion, what we need to focus on is that financial resilience of the council. So that's ensuring that we have an adequate level of reserves. It's ensuring that we don't use reserves, for example, for recurring expenditure. We only use it when it's essential, and that if we do have to use reserves, our first job the following year is to put them back. So we would, you will, when we do the budget strategy, you will see every year that we do a statement included in there that sets out the my statutory view of the kind of resilience of the council. Janie also includes some monitoring officer comments in that report to bring all those issues together. Obviously, it's a political organisation, and executive full council make those decisions, but as officers, we will advise you. So the Treasury management Outturn brings into that the prudential indicators. That's how we ensure that we don't borrow money that we can't afford to repay, and through the accounts, and ensuring we've got an adequate level of reserves. So, you're not looking at the detail, but I'm sure Emma went through with you things like, what's happening with reserves. So you'll see that we haven't used any of the general reserve. That is still at around about 5% of our budget, which is roughly the right amount. So if we were to overspend, we would have to use reserves to fund that and then work on that. So that's part of our medium-term financial strategy. That is a challenge when we keep getting one-year settlements, because we don't know. Inflation is pressure, and we just don't know how the government is going to deal with that, or if they are going to deal with that in respect of local government. And there have been a lot of headlines lately, haven't there, about the cost. And again, as part of our work for Monitor 1 reports, we are looking at what sort of price risk there is in our capital programme to give members early indication of, well, this is how much money you've got. If all the costs are going up, you're not going to be able to do everything, are you, on a capital programme? And it will be the same with the revenue budget. Where would we go to make those savings? So that's part of ongoing work that we'll be reporting through to executive, and that will also go through to scrutiny committees and so on.
May I just add to that? In my capacity as the monitoring officer, it's now more important than ever that both Debbie and I in our statutory positions work really closely together. The implications are going to be more fundamental in reports coming before members, because it's we are now duty bound to highlight the starker risks in decision making, the affordability, and it's not just the affordability now; it's the longer term affordability, and it's a bit back to safe decision making, realistic expectations as well. And so my advice would be, as part of any decision making going forward, all members of City of York Council should be mindful of the professional implications in reports, because Debbie and I, more now than ever in our statutory positions, are duty bound to highlight very clearly some potential stark problems, just to be mindful of monitoring the council spend. And it is my role to support the Section 151 officer in ensuring that there's a reasonable, a safe, prudential review of spending before too much money is committed that puts the council at risk. So it is really fundamental, and Debbie and I are working closely together on that.
Anything else from members on the draft accounts? We will look at this again, hopefully in November's meeting, where we'll also have the audit report as well.
And just to reiterate, I think Emma made the offer again at the training the previous evening. If you do have any questions at any time, just drop us an email. Don't feel that you have to wait for them to come again in November. Just let us know, and we can respond to that.
Thank you, Debbie. Move on now to Mazars Audit Strategy Memorandum, which starts on page 243 of the report. And I believe that we do have Mark joining us remotely.
Hi, Chair. Hopefully you can hear.
We can. Welcome.
I thought it was best not to come because we had a confirmed COVID case in the house last week. So,
well, thank you very much for being so considerate of us. But it's good to have you here remotely.
okie dokie. So I will take the report as read, but highlight the key areas of the plan for your consideration tonight. If I could draw your attention to page 249 of the agenda pack, you'll see a helpful summary of the functions that we've been appointed to perform. As you will see, there's no changes from the previous year, and we will provide your statutory audit, a conclusion on the Council's arrangements to secure value for money, report to the National Audit Office on your WGA Whole of Government Accounts submission, and complete our responsibilities in regard to electors' rights. On page 254, we provide a timeline we've agreed with management to complete the audit. As you can see, we've started the audit planning and our field work will commence in early October. It's worth noting that we've already started our work on property valuations, where we have engaged with our valuer to consider the valuation of the Council's HRA properties, Allerton Waste Recycling Centre, the Community Stadium and the depreciated replacement cost methodology. And these are things that we came a little bit unstuck on last year. So we're getting in there early to make sure that we're in a good place ready for the final accounts audit. And as has already been mentioned, we do plan to complete the audit work by November 2022. In line with the National Audit Office guidance, our value for money commentary will be reported 3 months after we've signed off our audit opinion. So that'll probably be in the early new year. Pages 256 to 261 provide our assessment of the significant risks and key judgments we have identified as part of our planning. As you will see, we have highlighted the following significant risks. First one being management override, which is a standard risk across all of our audits, and we will focus our work on accounting estimates, judgments, journals, and any unusual transactions within the accounts. Second risk we've highlighted is revenue recognition, where we will focus our testing on year-end receivables and income recorded in and around the year-end. No surprises, the third risk we've got on there is the valuation of property valuations. Again, our work will focus on the estimates and judgments applied by management and the valuer. And the fourth risk, again, no surprise, is the net pension liability valuation. And again, it's a material value with lots of judgments and estimates, as has already been discussed by Debbie. Section 5 of our report, which is on pages 262 onwards, describes our approach to value for money commentary. And on page 263, it sets out the requirements of the code, highlighting the 3 criteria of our assessment, those being financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. On page 265, we've highlighted an area of focus, that being our follow-up from the public interest report that was issued in 2021. And at this stage, it's worth pointing out that we've not started any of our work in regard to value for money. Section 8 of our report, page 272, confirms our planned approach to materiality, which is currently based on around 2% of gross expenditure from the 2021 audited statements. This equates to a headline materiality of £9.3 million, which is up from 8.95 in the previous year. Performance materiality is circa 6.9 million, and the reporting threshold is £275,000. And this is the amount we will report any errors to those charged with government. I think at this stage, it's also worth mentioning that due to the delay in the National Audit Office's group instructions, we've not completed the WGA for 2021. So we'll work with Debbie and her team to get this done as soon as possible. And this will enable us to issue the 2021 certificate. And it's also worth pointing out that's in common with all of our other local government clients. So this concludes what I'd like to say on the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions, members? No. Councillor Fisher, I can see you looking for notes. Are you all right? Anybody else got any questions for Mark? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, Mark. I hope everyone is recovering well with you, and I'm sure we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we move on to our final agenda item, which is the audit and governance work plan. We look at our work plan every meeting to look at all of the things that we need to fit in and where they're going to arrive. And we've got some proposals for some changes to our work plan and schedule of meetings. So Janie, do you want to take us through that?
Thank you, Chair. It is proposed that we cancel the provisional meeting on the 13th of July, that we retain our meeting on the 7th of September, and subject to the views of committee this evening, the LGA would be free and willing to provide their second report and attend and speak to that on the 7th of September. They expressed their apologies for this evening's meeting. So those of you who are existing members will recall that the original plan was that the LGA would report this month. Unfortunately, they were not in a position to do so and have asked for their second report to come at the 7th of September meeting. In May also of this year, the government finally issued their response to the consultation on severance payment in local authorities. You will recall that during autumn last year, we prepared an exit strategies document in line with the consultation that was issued by the government at that time on severance packages and exit strategies. That was approved by Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee on the 18th of October 2021. And therefore, with the committee's approval, we would like to bring the City of York's response to exit strategies and the response issued by the government to the 7th of September meeting, which is actually quite timely with the LGA being in attendance. Chair, if I may as well, would also like to bring a retrospective report, which I'm hoping to take to full council on the 14th of July. Since the publication of the Constitution, and various meetings have now taken place, and we've had an ILACS inspection as well. I've received numerous requests to do some minor changes to the Constitution, and I'm seeing that as an absolute positive because people are replying and reading and consulting our new Constitution. And I did anticipate, I see this as positive, and I did anticipate having to make some tweaks or changes or receive some feedback. And therefore, with the committee's approval, I'd like to bring the retrospective report that we will take to full council on the 14th of July for your noting, because that would then form part of the annual review and fitness for purpose test of the Constitution. I will, of course, share that draft report with the Chair and Vice Chair prior to its publication, if that's okay. I think the other query that we had as well is whether members still wish to have a meeting on the 4th of January 2023, so immediately into the new year, or whether that was just a little bit too early in the new year, given that we have a meeting on the 18th of January as well. So there's consideration from the committee this evening whether you're happy to blend the two January meetings together and perhaps not have a meeting on the 4th of January. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Janie. And just to clarify, the LGA report is obviously the second report from them, is the report on how well City of York Council have incorporated the actions from the action plan following the public interest report. And there will then be a third report for them, which we hope will come to the November meeting. If not, it will come in January. And that will be following some site visits by the LGA to test out how we are managing to embed good governance processes. And Janie and I've had a conversation about the fact that once we get to the end of the action plan, in response to the PIR. That is not the end of things. We need to continue to work to embed good governance. And I also agree that it's a positive that we need to do some minor amendments to the Constitution, because it means that people are reading it, which is excellent. And, you know, a lot of work went into the changes to the Constitution that we made earlier in the year. And I think it's really positive that it's being seen as that living document that is in use. So any questions from members on any of those proposals around our work plan? Any questions, thoughts you want to share on it? No? Councillor Wan.
Is it missing some future external audit dates? Do we now have a clearer idea of when they might want to speak to us, to follow up on what Mark was just saying there?
So they will come back in November for the audit completion report. So, which is on our work plan, but it actually doesn't say external audit on there, but so that's perhaps why we've hidden it from you unintentionally, but they will come back in November. Anything else from anyone? No, so we'll go ahead and we'll cancel the 13th of July meeting because we don't have anything for that meeting. The second report from the LGA will come in September, which I think will be really helpful, and we'll deal with the exit payments at the same time. Again, I think that'll be really helpful. And then hopefully in November, we'll have the third report from the LGA peer team, and we'll cancel the 4th of January meeting, which when we all looked at, we thought, well, that's very early into the new year, and there will be people who will still be enjoying a break at that point in the year. Okay.
Chair, what I can do is, in light of that, I can circulate a revised work plan for you, so that you've got a sight of what we plan to do, rather than wait till the September meeting. So we can amend that and circulate it around committee members, if that helps.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Okay.
Can I just say something just very briefly?
Certainly.
Can I just add my thanks to Councillor Pavlovich for his work as a member of this committee, as his vice chair. He was a dream to work with, spent hours on the phone chatting. He was incredibly committed and I miss him. But I hope you and I will develop exactly the same standard relationship as I did with him. Thank you.
I'm sure we will, Councillor Fisher. Absolutely. Well, there being no other urgent business that has been notified, we will close the meeting now. Thank you, everybody, for your participation here and on the phone. Much appreciated.